Hi, my name is Beth and I'm a sewing pattern designer and blogger at Sew DIY. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to adjust the length of the rise on a pair of pants. The rise can also be called the crotch depth or crotch length, and it essentially means the distance between the bottom of the crotch and the waistband. So this is a pretty common adjustment for me. I'm 5'11" and I have a long torso, so most patterns are not designed with my height in mind. So I usually have to lengthen the crotch anywhere from 3/4 of an inch up to like 4 inches. How much you need to adjust the length of the crotch really depends on your body and on the pattern. And also on your preference. Like, you may want the pattern to sit at your natural waist, or you may want it to sit a little bit lower, or maybe like even lower for, you know, like an early aughts Britney Spears kind of thing. If you remember those pants. So one way to get kind of an idea of how much you need to adjust your pattern is to use a flexible measuring tape and measure your crotch from the front all the way to the back and then compare it to the pattern. And even after you make the pattern adjustment, I recommend making a muslin to test it out and see if you got it into the right place yet. If you have a shorter torso, it's going to be pretty easy once you make a muslin to just pinch out the excess and see how much you'll need to adjust the pattern. But if you're taller and it's too short, you can't just pinch out what you need to remove. So you might want to err on the side of making a larger adjustment than muslining and pinching out the excess. I think that's a better way to go than having to make like 4 different muslins and you keep adding and keep adding and keep adding. And I'm telling you this from experience. So it's super hot in my studio today. Let's dive right into those pattern adjustments. So here I have a pants pattern that I have just made up. Usually you just have one front and one back, and this is the curve for the front crotch, this is the curve for the back crotch, and then these are the side seams. And right here we have our grain line marking. And usually when you buy a pattern, you're also going to have some lines that show you where to lengthen and shorten your pattern, and hopefully you're going to have one for the crotch and also at least one for the leg. This made up pattern doesn't have one, but it's pretty easy to add in. And the key is to make sure that your length and shorten line is perpendicular to your grain line. So I have a marker and a ruler, and we'll start with our front and just draw a line that's perpendicular. So perpendicular means that it's 90 degrees difference. And we will do this for the back. And generally you want it to be in like pretty much the same place. Like, you don't want to have your length and shorten line be way up here on the back and then way down here on the front. So I'll just make like a little red dot that's about where we want to lengthen our back piece. If your pattern has more than a front and a back, like if it also has a side panel, move sweetie, thank you. So if your pattern also has a side panel, you will also need to do that for the side panels so that it's lengthening the same amount throughout. So now that we have that marked, we will take our scissors and just cut along our length and shorten line. Okay, now if you are looking to shorten your crotch rise or crotch depth, then you will want to overlap these pieces of paper, and you just want to keep your grain line in the same place. Overlap them however much you need and then redraw this curve. And you would overlap the same amount for the back and then redraw the back curve. But for this example, let's lengthen it. So when you lengthen, you're going to need to get another piece of paper and slide it underneath. And if you're working with tissue paper, it's really handy to use a cutting mat like this that has measurements on it, because you can use the grid to help you out. So what you can do, I'm lining this up with my grid. I can see through my paper. And I'm just going to tape this in place. And then you can draw a line from the cut line to how much you want to increase the length. So I'll just draw a line there. And then it's also helpful to extend the grain line. So I want to make sure that this grain line lines up with this one and lines up with that new line. And then I will tape this in place. Then we just need to redraw this curve. And you just kind of estimate that. You can use a French curve if you have it. Just want to keep it really nice and smooth. And now we'll do our back piece. So I'm going to take some of my paper from the front, set that aside, and do it the same amount because you want your side seams to be the same. So let's see, don't forget we're going to extend our grain line and then mark how far we want to extend the rise. So you can see this is a pretty quick adjustment. All right, then here again, we would just redraw the crotch curve there and you extend it over here and you can just cut out your new pattern pieces. I have been asked before, how do you extend the rise in the back only? So you're gonna do a very similar adjustment, and the key is that you wanna make sure that your side seam stays the same length. So we're not going to cut all the way through. Let's draw this perpendicular line. We'll draw this, and then right here, that's our imaginary seam line. That's where you'll be stitching. And then we're gonna cut from the crotch over to the seam line. And then you wanna have a little hinge. So now we need another scrap of paper. I'm gonna steal one from here. This time, you're not going to be able to keep this top part on the same grain line, so you'll have to redraw it. But let's tape our bottom down. And then you can measure up how much you want to increase. So maybe that much. And then we can tape down our top part. So you can see this seam line has stayed the same, but we've increased the depth of our back crotch. So you'll need to redraw this line and then also extend your grain line and create a new grain line for the top part of the pant. Well, I hope that that video was helpful for you. That last adjustment was a special request from somebody on Instagram, so make sure to hit me up in the comments, send me a DM, subscribe on Instagram, and let me know if you have any special requests for future videos. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that little subscribe button down below so that you can stay up to date on all my future videos. Happy sewing!